Hello and welcome to Religious Studies 361. This is our second session and it will be a continuation of the first thematic block which we started last time with our discussion of morality and the law and a number of other important concepts in ethics. One central issue we dealt with was natural law. It's very important for you to keep this concept in mind. So let me briefly summarize for you what we said. We said that natural law theory says that morality is objective and universal, and that we are born with an innate knowledge for it, and that when we disagree, it's because we are really blinding ourselves through sin. There are different religious explanations to what is right and what is wrong, which is as fully objective as the fact that this is a book. Okay? Let me say a few words more about natural law today before we move on to our discussion of the next topic. We have the first documented reference to natural law, or one of the first documented references to natural law, coming from pre-Christian times, specifically in a play by Sophocles, 5th century BCE playwright, called Antigone, which is part of a series of plays, which I have here with me. We have a reference to this higher law, which is above human law. And that can be considered like a first testimony of what we mean by natural law. Let me tell you about the play. There is a civil war in the city-state of Thebes in ancient Greece. There are two parties. One of those parties finally wins the war, and they install their ruler, their tyrant. His name is Creon. And when Creon comes to power, well, of course, he executes people from the other party who had been fighting against him. And there were two brothers, one on each side of this war. And when Creon comes to power, he orders the brother on the losing side to be executed, but also his body not to be buried, to be left outside to rot and be eaten by the animals and birds. Antigone is the sister of these two brothers, the one on the winning side and the one on the losing side. And she can't put up with the idea of letting her brother, her dead brother, rot in the open, because that's considered to be really unhuman and inhumane, both things. And so she buries her brother, and she's arrested by one of the guards and taken before Creon. Let me just say a word about the origin, the etymology of the word human. I'm sure you're all familiar with the word to exhume. To exhume means to unbury, to bring out a dead body. But guess what? Human is the same word that you find in exhume. Humans are those who bury their dead. Other animals don't do that, but humans bury their dead. That's what makes us human, etymologically at least. Okay? And so Antigone feels that not to bury her brother is the most unhuman thing to do and the most cruel thing and inhumane thing to do. And so she goes ahead and buries her brother. She's taken by the guard before Creon, and this is the dialogue that takes place. Creon asks her, "Tell me, did you know the order not to bury your brother?" And Antigone replies, "Yes. It was plain." Creon says, "And you made free to overstep my law? You dared to disobey my law?" And then Antigone replies, "Because it was not Zeus, God, who ordered it, nor justice with a capital J, meaning God again, gave such a law to men, nor did I deem your ordinance of so much binding force as that a mortal man could overbear the unchangeable, unwritten code of heaven. The unchangeable, unwritten code of heaven. So she says, I did not deem your ordinance, your ruling, your order not to bury my brother as to having such a force that it could be enough for me to violate this other law, which she defines as the unchangeable, unwritten code of heaven, which is not of today and yesterday, but lives forever, having origin whence no man knows, whose sanctions I were loath in heaven's sight to provoke, fearing the will of any man. So she is more afraid of violating this higher law that originates no one knows where, but high above. She was more afraid of breaking that law than of breaking the human law, for which she will be executed, and she knows it. But she says, the penalty for violating that law is worse than the penalty of execution for violating your orders. There you have it, beautifully explained, beautifully drawn. This higher law which is above human law and which sometimes may conflict. But again, there you have also a reference to the religious origin of the law, the higher law. It comes from no one knows where, but she mentions Zeus, and justice with capital J, above human understanding and action. Okay, and now we're going to move on to a discussion of Thoreau's book, Resistance to Civil Government, also known as Civil Disobedience. On page 226, we read at the very beginning of Thoreau's book, I heartily accept the motto, that government is best which governs least, and I should like to see it acted up to more rapidly and systematically. Carried out, it finally amounts to this, which I also believe. That government is best which governs not at all. And when men are prepared for it, that will be the kind of government which they will have. Government is at best but an expedient, but most governments are usually, and all governments are sometimes, inexpedient. Now, a clarification, what he means by expedient and inexpedient. Government is at best but inexpedient. By inexpedient, he means a way to get things done quickly. We need to build freeways, we need to, this kind of thing. But he says most governments are usually inexpedient, they're not even good for that. And definitely some governments are always inexpedient. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think Thoreau is an anarchist? Someone who refuses obedience to any government at all, does not want government, central government at all. He thinks society can be organized on a different system without a central government. He sounds like it in principle, right? However, he's not. Look at what he says. He says, that government is best, which governs least, and I should like to see it acted up to more rapidly and systematically. The bottom line would be that government is best, which governs not at all. Sounds pretty anarchist. And when men are prepared for it, that will be the kind of government which they will have. Now, this is the key sentence to understand what he means. When men are prepared for it. Okay. Now, he's writing in the 19th century, so he talks about men as representing the whole of humanity. Today, we would say when people, or men and women, but not just men, but when men are prepared for it, this will be the kind of government which they will have. So he's not an... Okay, well, we had a little bit of an interruption due to technical reasons. So let me restate the question again. Was Thoreau an anarchist? He seems to be saying he doesn't want government at all. However, he also says that when men are prepared for it, that will be the kind of system that they will have, the kind of government that they will have, which makes him something different from an anarchist. An anarchist wants to change the system right away. He wants to do away with government immediately and establish this society without any kind of central administration. Also on page 227, he informs us of one of the reasons why he is so incensed against the government of his day. He says in the first paragraph, "Witness the present Mexican War, the work of comparatively a few individuals using the standing government as their tool. For in the outset, the people would not have consented to this measure." There are two issues that really upset Thoreau. One is the Mexican War, which he feels was unjustified, and the other one is slavery. He is writing in the first part of the 19th century. By the way, radical as Thoreau sounds, it must be said that he is one of the central figures of American literary and political tradition. He's one of the main political thinkers, philosophers, if you wish, also, and literary figures in the American tradition. He has inspired many people. He was particularly inspiring to the rebels of the 1960s, but not only to those, also to people such as Martin Luther King Jr. and other important figures. Anyway, let's continue with resistance to civil government. On page 227, he goes on to say, to speak practically and as a citizen, unlike those who call themselves no government men. Again, he's making it clear that he's not an anarchist. He says, unlike those who call themselves no government men, meaning anarchists, I ask for not at once no government, but at once a better government. Let every man make known what kind of government would command his respect, and that will be one step toward obtaining it. After all, the practical reason why, when the power is once in the hands of the people, a majority are permitted and for a long time continue to rule, is not because they are most likely to be in the right, nor because this seems fairest to the minority, but because they are physically the strongest. Now, this is a very important point he's making, okay? We find this point even made in some of the Platonic dialogues way before Thoreau. We're talking about the 5th century BCE, in which certain characters, one character called Thrasymachos in the Republic, insists that it's power that makes right. So this notion has been with us for a long time, and Thoreau basically says that's pretty much right. I mean, not that he believes that power makes right, but those who have power are not more in the right. Majorities are not more in the right just because they are the majority. They simply impose their will on others because they have the power to do it. That doesn't make them more right. That's his point. And then he says, can there not be a government in which majorities do not virtually decide right and wrong, but conscience? It is conscience, not majorities, not votes that decide right and wrong. In which majorities decide only those questions to which the rule of expediency is applicable, whether we should build another freeway or a bridge or something like that. That's where majorities and government should really count, and only at those issues. I think